for our board members to get back. I believe they might just be finishing up their site visit. So hang tight. The meeting will start as soon as they get back. Greetings, everyone. We're just waiting for a few of our board members to get back from the tour of inspection. Thanks for your patience. Just hang tight and we'll be with you soon. I see we have 2 board members on, and I'm sure we'll get the other 3 here very soon.
Thank you.
I understand you're playing secretary today, Brandon.
That is true. That is true. I'll be wearing 2 hats this evening, but I think I can pull it off.
I think
Spelling
you
will
can.
be checked.
Thanks.
You're wearing lots of hats these days.
It's okay. I got a big fat head, so it'll be fine.
It's a beautiful day out there. We should all be outside.
I was envious I couldn't join the tour of inspection today. I had something I had to get finished up.
Yeah, you lost out.
I did.
I wonder where the rest are. They were right with us. Maybe they forgot to leave crumbs. They're lost in the forest.
I would
The
just
architect is trying to sign on right now. He just messaged me.
I did just receive a message from board member Pomeroy, so I resent her the link for joining.
You know, this happened last time too, Brandon, where I had to go into Marnie's email and paste it from that and take down the passcode and put it in. It's not automatic like it used to be, where you just click on it and it would all come up. Yeah.
I think that the trade-off was that we used to have a waiting room where people would have to be admitted, and we moved to just an open meeting once you have the passcode, because it's like, pretend we're in the chambers. Basically, you shouldn't have to have someone let you into the chambers to come to a public meeting. So as long as you have the code, you're fine. But yeah, it's just an extra step. That's why it's in there.
Okay, I think that threw maybe some of us off a little bit.
Yeah, I understand.
You can also just go into the calendar. If you accept and use a calendar, you can just go into your calendar and click on the link and it'll bring it right up for you.
Yeah, that's the other way to do it. That's why we try to send out the calendar invite to the board members, so it's easier for you to get in.
Oh.
Yeah, I guess I didn't get the calendar invite, I don't think.
I didn't either.
Looks like it went to eric@dyerarchitecture.com.
Well, then maybe I didn't see it. It's my fault.
It's okay. It could have gone, who knows? It could have gone to your spam folder.
That's possible. I might.
Yeah.
Can you prove me a liar too?
If you'd like me to, yeah, it went to hallnelson@comcast.net.
Okay. Well, I don't know why I didn't see it, but.
I'll have to be aware of that. I'll look for it elsewhere then. So we have, I think everyone's on board here. Is Catherine? No.
We're still waiting on board member. Oh, it looks like Kathy Pomeroy.
Catherine's here. Kathy's here. Okay. Jordan's here. Carol's here.
Great. All right, Mr. Chair, you have a quorum then, and I will also be acting as your secretary this evening as well. So I'll do your roll call votes for you.
Okay. Thank you for that. Okay, I'll go ahead and call to order the regular meeting of the City of Carmel-by-the-Sea's Historic Resources Board for Monday, October 18th, 2021. Roll call, please. Mr. Swanson.
Board Member Croman.
Here.
Board Member Galtieri. I think you're muted, but I did see a mouth movement there. Board Member Galtieri is here. Board Member Hall.
Here.
Board Member Pomeroy.
I'm here.
And Chair Dyer.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay, great. So let's see. I think I should have on this before we. Oh, I see. That's the tour inspections. So anyone wishing to address the board on matters that are not on the agenda may do so now. Please, maybe raise your hand in the chat. Oops, Brandon, you're muted.
Thank you. For anyone's unsure how to do it, if you're on your computer, at the bottom of your screen, there's a tab that says reactions. If you click on that, you'll see a button for raising hand. That's if you'd like to raise your hand on your computer. If you're on a phone, whether it's mobile or landline, *9 will raise your hand. And to unmute your device on the computer, the bottom left-hand corner, there's a mute and unmute button. Looks like a microphone, old school microphone. You can click on that. And on your phone, *6 will unmute your device. And during that long ramble, Mr. Chair, I didn't see anyone do any of those things. Okay. So I think you're safe to proceed.
Okay, great. Next item is announcements from anybody. I guess that would mean board members or staff. Seeing none, I'll move on to the consent agenda, which I don't see any items on that. I guess the previous minutes are not on the agenda this time, but maybe for the next meeting. Orders of business then is our public hearing DS 21-220. Greg, consideration of adding an historic resource to the Carmel Register of Historic Resources, waiving the on-site parking requirements, and issuing a determination of consistency with the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties for this design study. It's for a 1,006 square foot 2-story addition to a 594 square foot 1-story historic residence. or resource, repainting of the resource, and associated site improvements located on Santa Rita, 3 northeast of 3rd Avenue in the R1 district. Staff report, please.
Well, thank you, Chair Dyer, and good afternoon. So the project before you this afternoon is the historic Alfonso Ramirez cabin.
Marnie, are you sharing your screen?
Yes, sir.
We cannot see it.
Oh, sorry. I did not share my screen. Okay, how about now?
Thank you. Perfect.
Thank you. Okay, so the Alfonso Ramirez cabin was constructed in 1888. It is on the local inventory of historic resources. It is associated with a direct descendant of the Carmel Mission Indian groups, which is Mr. Ramirez himself. He was also one of the early Carmel stage drivers. And his cabin, which he constructed and lived in, represents late 19th century residential homes in Carmel. So the existing cabin is 594 square feet. The applicant is proposing just over 1,000 square feet in a 2-story addition to the rear of the cabin. The perspective that you see on the screen is actually looking from the southeast corner of the lot. So you're looking at the back of the cabin, and you can see the addition on the right and the historic cabin on the left. The applicant is also proposing to repaint the cabin and then make some associated site improvements to facilitate the addition. So this afternoon, the board is being asked to add this historic resource to the Carmel Register. This is a separate listing that is maintained in Carmel, and it allows certain benefits to property owners, one of which is a waiver of on-site parking requirements, which the applicant is also requesting as part of the project. And then also the board's being asked to issue a determination of consistency with the Secretary's standards. So the 10 standards are listed on the left. I'm not going to go into each one in detail. Phase 2 report was prepared by Meg Clovis and found that the project was consistent with standards 1 through 6 and 10, and that standards 7 and 8 were not applicable. So we're going to focus this afternoon on standard 9, which has been found consistent after certain modifications recommended by Ms. Clovis were incorporated into the project. So standard 9 talks about new additions and making sure that they do not destroy historic materials or spatial relationships. It also speaks to differentiating the new from the old. Additionally, the standards speak to additions being subordinate to the historic character of the property. And typically this means additions are smaller than the historic building itself. However, the standards do allow for additions that are slightly taller and slightly larger, depending on site conditions, and with a determination that the addition remains visually subordinate to the historic building. So the site plan that you see on this slide, the red outline is the historic cabin. The small blue rectangle in the middle is the hyphen or the connector between the historic resource and the new addition. The blue line represents the first floor addition, and the green line represents the second floor addition. The second floor is around 290 square feet. The photographs on this slide were taken after the story poles were installed to demonstrate how visible the addition would be from the public way. And when looking at the resource straight on, you cannot see the addition. However, as you go north, you do start to get a glimpse of it through the trees. So one of the recommendations from the phase 2 assessment was to reduce the number of exterior wall materials. Originally, the project was proposed to have stone, stucco, and board and batten. And so in order to simplify the design, the architect has revised the exterior materials to be board and batten and is differentiating them between the historic building and the new addition by spacing the battens out further and then using a different width batten. So another distinguishing feature of the addition is that it is proposed off the rear elevation, which is secondary and non-character defining. The hyphen is an appropriate treatment to connect a historic resource to an addition. And the architect has taken steps to shield the addition from the public way, both with the siting of it on the lot and then as well as the use of landscaping. Additionally, the addition is proposed to have a different paint color, and the intent behind that is to ensure that if the addition is seen in the same plane from that northern corner, that it is visually distinct. It doesn't blend in with the historic cabin, but allows the cabin to stand on its own. Lastly, the phase 2 historic report had identified these lattice windows that you see circled here in red. There were a large number of them on the addition, which was found to be inappropriate for the historical style of this cabin. And so the recommendation was that the lattice windows be replaced with double hung windows. The architect has made all of the revisions, but is asking to keep 2 lattice windows, which would be at the very rear of the property in the master bathroom. And so staff finds that the revisions that have been made consistent with the phase 2 report prepared by Ms. Clovis are consistent with standard 9. And so staff is recommending that the board adopt a resolution adding the resource to the Carmel register, waiving the on-site parking requirement, and then adopting a determination of consistency. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Marnie, were there revised elevations showing those material changes?
So the elevations that were presented to the board have those revisions incorporated within them.
Okay.
Marty, we were told today during the tour that there was a easement parking space. So do we still need to waive the on-site parking requirement?
Yeah, so the easement is a private agreement between the 2 property owners. It was a negotiated arrangement that they made, a sewer line for a parking space. I don't know all of the details, but again, it was a private agreement, and that parking space isn't necessarily recognized by the city as satisfying the required on-site parking.
There's also significant room on the north side. If you're looking at the front of the cabin on the north side of the property, it's a slope, but there's significant room there for parking. Has that been looked at?
Certainly. Once we found out that PG&E was going to be removing that tree, we did explore that area to satisfy required parking. Unfortunately, the only parking that is allowed within that front setback area is going to be a carport or a detached garage, both of which would obscure the resource and be detrimental. So the architect is planning to carve out a parking pad that would be parallel to the road. It would kind of straddle the property line. So while it will provide the owners with some parking that is partially on site, it simply doesn't meet our minimum requirements to be recognized as required parking.
I gotcha. Thanks very much.
Marnie, a question about the paint on the front. Looks like a dark brown with the same green as the addition green. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
Speaking of that, if we're looking to camouflage, I'm sorry, Eric. If we're looking to camouflage the back, was there any consideration of doing a different color green in the back? Making them appear shades off, but because there's a lot of foliage in there, adjusting the color at all? Was there any consideration of that?
So my understanding and working with the architect is that this color scheme is still preliminary in nature. It sort of demonstrates the concept of what he's trying to achieve. And certainly he can speak to other maybe combinations that he looked at, but certainly the board can also provide some direction in that regard as well.
What color was the building, the historic aspect of the building at the time of the stagecoach run? Anybody know?
According to the architect, he believes that the original color of the cabin was white.
Mm. Thank you.
Any other questions of Marnie from the board? Okay, hearing none, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is the applicant or applicant's representative here to present the project? Mr. Congleton, I believe. Brian, are you able to, did he call in, or I guess he doesn't have a Zoom connection?
I don't see an audio attached to his name, but perhaps the cell phone number ending in 66 is Brian, perhaps. And Brian, if that's you, *6 is going to unmute your device.
Uh-oh. Does someone know, that's obviously fairly important for the architect to present the project, so is anyone able to call him?
Let me try here.
Maybe Marnie, you could send him the Zoom link like you sent us.
Yes, I believe Brandon is giving him a call. I do see the owners online, Donnie and Stacy Gregg, as well, if you'd like to invite them to speak while we're connecting with Brian.
Okay. Yeah, if the Greggs would like to address the board on their application, you certainly are welcome to do so now. You just press unmute on your audio.
Hello, this is Donnie Gregg.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we got you.
Sorry, I'm at the airport and it might be a little difficult for me. I'm getting ready to board a flight.
Okay.
So
hopefully Brian will get on shortly. But
I just spoke to Brian. He was trying to unmute his device. So that is him ending in 66. So we'll see. I let him know if he can't get it, I'll call him back, and I just put him on speakerphone on my phone. It's not looking like he's having any luck.
okay.
What about Mrs. Gregg?
Let
she should be.
me call Brian back, and we can at least let him speak.
Mr. Gregg, if you'd like to say anything about the project, you're certainly welcome to do so now. And again, we'll wait for Brian as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're just on our end trying to stick to the original, historical value. Brian's been working with us to steer us in the right direction. So anything we can do, to have this thing move along, per your requirements, we're willing to do. So I don't really have too much to say.
All right, Mr. Chair, I do have Brian Congleton on my
Okay,
phone.
great.
So I'm gonna hold him up.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg.
I'm gonna take down my video so you guys can. I'm gonna hold it close to my camera. That's why my video is not there. So go ahead, Brian.
Okay, go ahead, Brian.
Mrs. Gregg, I think Mrs. Gregg is trying to speak though.
Oh, sorry. Do you want to, Mr. Chair? Where would you like to go first?
Well, I was going to let
saying
Brian.
I'm finally unmuted.
Sorry.
I was saying I was finally unmuted. So I think the last mention of the color scheme that you were questioning, was that what you were asking about?
There was a question of the board members to staff, but people are certainly willing to, board members can ask you or the architect as well those questions. But if you have an answer to it, you may certainly address it now.
No, I think somebody said that it used to be white, which was correct, with a green trim. Mm-hmm. And in putting our request in, we tried to stay in line with the darker palette of the cabin and therefore incorporate the brown in the addition. So we're certainly open to that. We're trying to pick something that would be sort of complementary, but still allow the cabin to be separate from the addition.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any other?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yes, Brian. I was just going to let Mrs. Gregg say anything else you'd like to say at this point, since the floor is hers.
Well, the question is, am I coming through the phone?
I can hear you.
Or am I? You can hear me. All right.
Well, yeah, Brian, you're coming through the Zoom now. We got you on the Zoom.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
Well, okay. I certainly apologize for my lack of computer savvy or something. I want to basically answer any questions. I want to explain about the colors. I'm off my mojo right now. I apologize for that. The reason for the two different colors, as I mentioned in the site visit, is to differentiate the back building. And in fact, if you combine that with the landscape screening that we're proposing, my feeling is that it will read as a different building beyond the historic structure, rather than reading as an addition to the historic structure. I had hoped for more distance between the historic structure and the addition, but we're bound by the 15-foot second floor setback, which pushes that upper floor right closer to the addition than we wanted. That's not a bad thing in the eyes of the neighbors, because it minimizes impact on the light and view from the house to the north and the house to the east by pulling the addition far away from them, but it does push it closer to the cabin. Our feeling was, if we do a dark color on the cabin, we do a different color, not a bright color, but lighter than the cabin and certainly different than the cabin, we have singled out the cabin as a historic structure and separated the addition from it. I trust that explains why the two colors.
Okay. So thank you, Brian. I'll allow questions now from the board of the architect or the owners. Any questions from the board? Okay. Then I'll go ahead and ask anyone else attending the Zoom meeting that would like to speak on this application? I don't know if anyone else is, I don't see anyone else on the call, so.
Sure, I'm not seeing anyone. Yeah, you're right.
Okay, I will go ahead and close the public hearing then and bring it back to the board for discussion. Who would like to begin?
Mr. Chairman, I could start.
Go ahead, Catherine.
I want to congratulate the Greggs. I think they're a fantastic young couple for taking this project on. This is really one of the oldest and one of the probably primary residents from the late 19th century and has a very interesting history. And I think adding this resource to the Carmel Register and what that implies will be a big plus for the city of Carmel's historic preservation program. And I was interested in what Marnie said in her presentation about the fact that the standards, the secretary standards, do allow for taller and somewhat larger additions depending on the site conditions. And after visiting the project earlier, you can see that there are a lot of challenges, and what the architect has done is to make the best use of what he has there to work with, and yet keep the addition looking subordinate. And I can think of three other places in Carmel where the board in the past has approved hyphens to separate the historic or to combine two historic buildings. And that would be the Periwinkle and Sea Urchin cottages on Scenic Avenue. That was a big plus for preservation. Also there on San Antonio and 4th, the very early Murphy Powers barn and studio that was added to with a hyphen. And also the Charles Moore House of Sea Ranch fame up on, I think it's Lopez, if I'm not mistaken. So the action that we're being asked to take to do this today is certainly not precedent setting. And I think the fact that it is being added in the back, lower elevation, hidden by many, many trees and foliage, will work in favor of what the architect is proposing. And I think what the historic consultant recommended to us in various ways to change the materials and the paint color to be sure that the addition remains subordinate to the cabin, those are all, we should incorporate those if we decide to approve this in our resolution. Brian Congleton, to my way of thinking, is a very good Carmel architect with many years of experience in historic remodels. And I think his plans for this project treat the cabin with all the respect that it deserves. So I'll look forward to hearing what the other board members think, but I'm at this point in favor of the remodel.
Sure, Dyer, I'd echo a lot of what Catherine said. First of all, congrats to the Greggs, and thanks for, this is just the coolest house ever. And I was very skeptical, really skeptical when I read through the, as a matter of fact, I think I read through it twice just because I was like, there's no way this can happen. But I think that Brian did a really good job of trying to camouflage this. I would look at paint colors to think about camouflaging maybe even better because there's a lot of trees back there. The one thing I will say is, I know you guys want to put those two fairy tale window, so-called fairy tale windows in there. I mean, I'm not sure why we're taking umbrage at that. The hyphenated house is clearly an addition. It doesn't look like the old house. It doesn't have the feel of the old house. I mean, if I would say that we should remove the proviso of requesting to remove those windows, because I think it's very clear that it's a very separate entity, and no one's going to confuse that with the historic home. So if you want to have the last fairy tale windows, I think that we should allow that to go forward. And, you know, I think, again, I would say with Catherine, surprisingly, you guys have done and Brian's done a good job of trying to camouflage this addition as much as possible.
Okay, thank you, Jordan. Carol?
I'm speechless. I think they've said everything I would say. I agree with both Catherine and Jordan, and even the lattice windows don't bother me at all, additional lattice windows. The only thought I had was, gee, if it were a little smaller, it might not be quite as imposing, but I know people are trying to max out their lots. I understand that. But you know, it's unfortunate that it's quite that much larger than the other, but I'm delighted that as much is being kept and saved as is happening.
Okay, thank you. Carol, anything from Kathy? Do you have anything you'd like to mention?
I have a question.
Sure.
If the second floor is only 200 square feet, that's hardly big enough to be anything. What's up there?
It's two bedrooms, I believe, if I look at the floor plan correctly.
Is it really only 200 square feet? That's really a small bedroom.
I'll let Marnie respond to that.
It's
Marnie?
291.
Yes.
291.
So closer to 300 square feet.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Okay.
I think it's a good plan too. I think they've done what they've set out to do about making it separate from the house. And I think the green does kind of camouflage it in the trees there. And I'm fine with them having their fairy tale windows too. I don't see why that bothers anybody. They're in the back anyway. And it makes the house a lot more functional to have that big addition. So yeah, it's fine with me.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. First of all, I'll just go through a list of things. I think it's great to place this amazing house on the historic register. I think it's exactly the perfect example of why we should allow for a parking exception. I think it's great that the house is so hidden from the street and the prime public right-of-way in terms of the view. It is very well differentiated. I guess my only possible question about it would be the fact that it appears basically to look like a completely different house, and it's in such proximity to the resource itself. So my thought would be, you know, I kind of wish there was a little more dialogue between the historic resource and the new addition. But in general, because you can't see it from the street, the use of the hyphen, which is a great technique, is done, and it's completely separate. I think it does, you know, it does meet the Secretary of Interior standards. And that's what we're determining today. So with that, is there any other comments from the board, or is there a motion?
So Eric, can I just procedural question? So we're going to vote whether to put this on the registry, and then we're going to vote on the addition itself, correct?
I believe it could be in one motion, could it not, Marnie? Do we have the resolution? We might look at the resolution that's been written out in the packet.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, you certainly can do that just to offer some guidance. So I think where you would want to diverge and do two different motions if the board was of a different opinion on the two matters. So if you wanted to go one direction with the listing and one direction with the project, then you would probably want to do two separate motions. But if it's all the same, you know, essentially approval of both, I think you're safe doing one motion with both of them in there.
So I'll go ahead and make the motion if I could, Chair. Recommendation one, or motion, first part of the motion would be to add it to the historic registry for DS 21220. And then the second part would be with regards to DS 21220, consideration of adding a historic resource to the Carmel. For the addition of the 1,006 square foot two-story addition to the 594 square foot, one-story historic resource, that we go ahead and approve it with the proviso that the fairy tale windows or the lattice windows are acceptable, and that all other items as laid out by Ms. Clovis are in place. So
it's basically a motion for determination of consistency with the Secretary of Interior standards. That's usually the way we phrase it. And then with, I guess, all the conditions of approval that were in the resolution, except for the cross grid windows.
Much better said. Thank you. Sure.
Is that a clear motion, Brandon?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you for the clarification.
I would like to second that motion.
Carol has a second, and we have a motion and a second. So roll call, please, Brandon.
Board Member Croman?
Yes.
Board Member Galtieri?
Yes.
Board Member Hall?
Yes.
Board Member Pomeroy?
Yes.
Chair Dyer?
Yes. I was just thinking, I think that because we included everything else in the resolution and included the parking waiver, but that should have been in the motion, right?
That's if it's the as recommended by staff, then yes. Yes.
So,
so Mr. Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
okay. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank all of you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So that is our only public hearing. And the next thing on the agenda is the director's report from Director Swanson.
Chair, I'll put my director hat back on and put my secretary hat to the side. Just a couple of updates for you today. I'm excited, very, very excited to announce that next Monday, the 25th of October, our new planner will be joining us in-house, in person, in life, in actuality. So we're very excited about that. His name is Saray Nathan. Nathan is his last name. Saray is his first name. He'll be joining us from Southern California. So he is a California planner. So we're excited about that because it's a special place, California, to do planning in. There's no place like it in the United States where we have the same type of planning rules, especially along the coast. So we're excited to have somebody that understands that nuance. We'll be sure to bring him to the next HRB and introduce him to all of you. Just an update for you on the conservatory, which was an item that you heard recently, if you recall. That's the China Art Building being proposed to be turned into a recording studio. The Planning Commission heard that this month and did actually continue it and asked the architect to try to find a way to bring the glass, if you recall the glass enclosure at the front of the building, try to find a way to bring that inside of the building.
Yay!
We're not cheering or anything at this point. These are just updates, so you can.
We're cheering.
Okay, well. So just want to let you know that. So we'll be back at the Planning Commission on the, the 10th of November. We'll be returning. We don't know what the applicant's going to do, but they were asked to go away and see if there's a way to bring that glass enclosure inside. So it's not going in the vestibule there. So we'll continue to keep the HRB posted on that. And along those same lines, an item that this board has heard, the City Council will be hearing an appeal on the World War I Memorial Arch plaque item. That will be on the November 2nd City Council meeting. The determination of consistency with respect to the names on the plaque. The board's decision was appealed to the City Council, so that will be on the November 2nd City Council meeting. The last bit of update for you is that we will begin our training series next month with the HRB that we talked about before. We're still working on the curriculum, so that was not ready quite yet for this meeting, but we will look forward to starting that next month, especially in conjunction with having a new planner in the house. I thought it'd be most appropriate to start that after we had our new planner. So since he won't be joining us until next Monday, it seemed most appropriate to start that next month. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair, unless there's any questions for me.
I have a question. Oh, sorry. Eric?
Go ahead, Carol.
Okay. I have a question for you, Brandon. In the training, are we going to be able to learn? I feel like I don't know how, when we get emails from the planners about particular homes, how to assess how we might make a home historic or find information to back up a home as historic. Will we be looking into how that procedure happens?
I'm sorry, I might not fully understand the question. So are you talking about when there is a determination of consistency or a determination of significance or non-significance that goes out to the board for like appeal? Is that what you're talking about?
When we get the emails between the meetings from various planners, and they have determined that it is not, or recommend that it is not a historic resource.
Preliminary determinations, basically.
Okay. Yes.
That will be covered.
No, so sorry, keep going though. I understand what you're talking about now. But
Okay.
what is it about that email that you'd like to know?
What I'd like to know is, let's say a house, there's some question of whether a house is historic or not. It's been recommended by the staff that it is not, but I feel I wouldn't know how, if there was one that I felt should be historic, how to proceed to prove that.
I see. Well, we can certainly make that part of it, but I can send the whole board. It's actually outlined in our municipal code. It's part of the process. So I can send that link to everyone. Essentially, it would just be one of the Historic Resource Board members calling it up to the Historic Resource Board for consideration, almost effectively an appeal of the staff's determination. So that's why we send that email out, because our code directs us to do that. When we make those staff level determinations, we send the email to the board. Any of the board members can call it up on appeal, essentially, was what we would call that. And then the whole board would take an action to make the decision whether or not that was correct.
Okay. And I remember when Catherine did this once, she had a whole, she had a lot of literature to back up her point. And so I was in awe of where she found all of that and how to do that.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman?
Please, yeah.
Sure.
One thing that has changed since that I looked up the information on the Dr. Beck house on San Carlos Street is that now we have all these determinations reviewed, I believe, correct me if I'm not correct, by one of the historic consultants too. So isn't it their job to give the information to the staff, and then the consultant and the staff together are recommending whether something is consistent or inconsistent with this determination? Am I correct?
Yeah, you're basically correct. So when I first started, one of the things that we changed was we don't do these determinations unless it's, I will say, there's always a caveat, right? If it's, so completely cut and dry that it's really just like an extension of a previous determination or something like that, we might do those at the staff level without bringing one of our historic consultants on board. But for the most part, 99.9% of the time, you're correct. It's a partnership now. I didn't want to have our staff being the only eyes on this type of decision, because it is so important and there are so many nuances, and we're not historic professionals. So that was something that I started right when I got here about 9 months ago, that we're partnering with either Meg or Seth, our two contract historians, in making these determinations.
That's excellent.
That's great. I was going to ask Brandon, do you know the grounds of the appeal for the World War I memorial?
I don't want to speak out of turn, so let me just send you, it's a public document, so let me just send you the actual appeal document.
Okay, just curious. Okay, and is there any, I guess, news on the context statement and putting that out for another RFP or?
Yeah, great question. There's no news because nothing has gone out yet, but we're starting to work on the RFP.
Okay, yep. Great. Okay, super. No subcommittee reports. Any future agenda items from the board? Next regular meeting is November 18th. And I skipped over board member announcements. I was just going to say, we did have a really successful home tour, I think, with the combination of AIA Monterey Bay in partnership with Carmel Heritage Society on on the 25th, September 25th. I hope people were able to go to that. Carol's home was on it, which was great. Thank you, Carol, again. But I think it was a record turnout. I think there was well over 600 people.
657 tickets were sold, I heard.
57 tickets were to all these 10 different homes all through Carmel. So it was really exciting and a great outreach for both of our organizations.
It was, I have to say, it was such a very positive experience. And at the end of it all, you wouldn't have known anyone had been through the house. People are so respectful and so appreciative and so positive. It was really a great experience.
Great.
I heard one person say, I loved Carol's house because it's so livable. I could see myself living there. And that really made this person's trip worthwhile. So I think, yes, they're beautiful buildings, but when you see one that someone lives in, I think it meant a lot to several people.
So we're all moving in, Carol.
Yeah, we're moving in, Carol.
I'll be there in 15 minutes.
I think she has a room, right? This is a big
I'll be there in 15 minutes. I'm bringing my slippers and my blankie.
You're all welcome for an hour or so.
Yeah, good.
And then I'll just say we have, as of last Thursday, the AA Monterey Bay and Arts and Architecture lecture series concluded with the lecture of George Brokoffa, which was really great. And those all on artsandarchitecturemonterey.org, all of the lectures of the series this year will be online with the videos of the series. So if you missed it, I would really encourage everybody to take a look at that. There's a Henry Hill, there's Will Shaw, there's Olaf Dahlström, John Thodas, and the last one, George Brokoffa. So
I heard you did a very nice job of presenting on Thodos, Eric.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question about term and term limits or whatever we're doing? So that seems to be a somewhat moving target. So we've gotten a couple different, we've gotten a couple different notifications on that. So Brandon, maybe you can talk to, where from what I understand, we're now, through the new year, but not to the projected date. So can you just explain that process to us, and then how we move forward from there?
Yeah, of course. Great question. So that did come up at the most recent city council meeting. If you recall, you received a communication from our acting city clerk, Ashley Wright. The city council considered that on the 4th of October. And the direction or the recommendation from staff was to, if you recall, stagger some of the term limits out in different year periods, because we had like three expiring on the same day in the same year, which is not a good situation to be in. So what happened at the city council meeting is that one of the city council members, Councilmember Barron, asked if he could have a couple of months basically to work with the city clerk and try to come up with a better schedule rather than, one year here, 1 year there. So long story short, we'll have more information in the next month or two from city council. It's sort of like a subcommittee of one. The mayor said, go ahead and do that. But all the terms were extended past October. So no one's going to expire this month. Everyone essentially got an extra 2 or 3 months, I think, through the new year, like you said, Board Member Croman. So that's where we're at right now. Our city clerk will keep you and our planning commissioners in close touch. We're just waiting for her to work with Councilmember Barron on that. So no one's getting kicked off right now.
Since Eric and I are, I think, the first ones to be jettisoned, and we may want to stay if people will let us. At that point, once we figure out when the term limits are, then we'll just we'll be given the opportunity to either extend or not extend. Is that the way it's going to go?
Yeah, I believe that's the intention, because we have 2 here on the HRB and 3 on the Planning Commission. So it was a lot, all expiring on the same day in the same year. So
Roger.
Yeah, so I will definitely keep you all apprised of that. And I'm sure the city clerk will too, but I'll make sure that you all know what's going on.
I guess just so we understand the process ahead of time. So if they do require I think you had implied before that people that are already on the commission and wish to extend their term didn't need to actually deal with the formal application, as long as that was.
Yeah, I think that's still the case. Yeah.
Still the case? Okay.
Yeah, I'll keep everyone posted though. And you'll have more than 30 seconds to decide or not decide. It won't be that short of a fuse, I promise.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, any other announcements or anything, other questions of Brandon? Okay, great. We will adjourn the meeting and see everybody on the 18th of November. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.